Hello there and welcome to another episode of Dave's Movie Diary. Gus Van Sant's Elephant from 2003. I really should have watched this one earlier in the day instead of taking it on at like 10 o'clock last night. Not a good decision because it's one of those films that doesn't end when it finishes. It stays with you, especially what happens near the end. What can I say? It's brilliant. It's shocking, true to life, I think, and above all, it's another example of Gus Van Sant's incredible range and versatility and fearlessness as a filmmaker. It's kind of based on the Columbine tragedy in the US in 1999, when one was 18 and one was nearly 18-year-olds walked through their school in Colorado one afternoon, and around 13 people died, including the killers. But it doesn't follow that note by note. It's an amalgam of similar situations, but it follows fairly closely to the Columbine tragedy, is my understanding. Takes more from it than from anything else, but don't expect to watch this and get a blow by blow of what happened at Columbine. There are a lot of differences, particularly the lead up, the motivation. Some of the trigger points aren't correct regarding Columbine, particularly the aspect that the boys were getting bullied or were ostracized. My understanding is that was not the case. But anyway, don't want to get into that too much. First viewing of this film was like a year or two after it came out. Saw it on DVD back in the day. I'd been a fan of Gus Van Sant's for a long time. And his films are really interesting because often your first take, or my first take, is not what my most recent take is. It changes a lot, is what I'm saying, because the films are usually so individualistic and are open to a lot of interpretation, which is cool. But they really lend themselves to a viewer's interpretation changing vastly across time. Which is the case with some of his films. This one, a little bit. But anyway, I'll get to that. So when I saw it the first time round, I think I probably expected, like most people do when they approach this one, is that this is what happened at Columbine, and maybe a conventional storytelling of that tragedy, and hopefully that it would explain what happened in Columbine and dramatize it in a traditional way. Instead, I got something completely different with the long tracking shots. There's no named actors in this. They're all unknown people. Apparently, Van Sant went and found everyone and intentionally found people that hadn't acted before, with a couple of differences. Sam Bottoms shows up initially as the father of one of the students, and hadn't seen him for a long time. I'm not sure I'd seen him since Apocalypse Now, where he's the surfer guy that Robert Duvall's Kilgore character gravitates towards in the classic scenes near the start of that film. Anyway, there's minimal dialogue in this. No real score. It is framed like a doco, but with a fair bit of artistic license thrown in as well. It doesn't guide you, is what I'm trying to say. This film, it doesn't feel like a movie. It's really interesting. So I remember coming away from it thinking that I respected what was being done, but I didn't think too much more about it. I probably just brushed it off at the time and was possibly mildly disappointed, I think. So anyway, like I said, you think it's going to be about what happened at Columbine. It's not. a large part of the film is about everything before it, and that's centering on ordinary school life. You know, just people hanging around in hallways and talking, and the usual teenage obsessions, relationships, um, friendships, hassles with parents, what their interests are. Really builds that up well. You know, the classes, lunchtime. One of the characters is really into photography. We follow him for a little while. Some of the other characters are playing sport. Just everyday mundane things unfolding in real time. And then slowly, without forcing it, you start to feel something building underneath it, obviously, with the two main characters planning the event. So the plot doesn't really drive it. It's just through atmosphere and the way that Van Sant frames everything in these long shots that are a lot like what Kubrick does. And watching it now, what really hit harder for me is how uncinematic everything feels by design. Definitely not a thriller. Don't expect that. There's no warning system for this. It's like I said, it's like watching something unfold in real time, which is really disconcerting in a way. There's no musical cues, for example. There's no Jaws music or Halloween or whatever we're accustomed to in a cinematic sense. Just stays calm. And that's what really makes it unsettling. You know that something's coming. You know that something's going to happen. Yeah, the violence is definitely not movie violence when it does hit. It's procedural. That's probably a good way of saying it. Controlled and emotionless. Which is in sync with my understanding of how Columbine and probably similar things unfolded. The way that these two guys just walk through the school as if they're carrying out a task, a project. There's no rage expressed and no cinematic expression of any emotion. They're just moving around, picking targets. And I found that absence of emotion makes it hard to process, because I think when we watch something like this, or you watch a horror film or something where people are doing extreme things, I think we as human beings, our natural inclination when we're watching something like that, and it's so compelling, is that we're trying to understand why it happened. We're trying to look for clues or telltale signs, maybe so that it's the survival instinct. Maybe we're trying to recognize signs in other people so we can steer clear or stop something from happening or protect ourselves. Or maybe it's just sheer curiosity. Maybe it's both. But this absence of emotion in these guys, in this film anyway, you come away thinking it's senseless. And is this just random? Can it happen to anyone? And that's even more shocking, I think, than a clear path towards this psychosis. And that, yeah, it's quite disturbing. Just the nonchalance, mowing people down. The gap between what I expected to see and what I actually saw is where the discomfort lives. And I kept trying to think what was going through their heads. You know, they're clearly not concerned about consequences. They already knew they weren't going to survive, and they were at peace with that. And I found that hard to reconcile for an 18 and a 17-year-old. And I think to similar events in life, people I've known, even recently, that have taken this choice and ended their own life. This is getting really morbid, but this is what this film's about. But I look for reasons why it happened, and I try to rationalize it. And sometimes, yes, there are definite, there's betrayal, or there's underlying conditions or family breakdowns. But this film doesn't help you out there, really. There's not much to hang on to as to why these two characters ended up doing what they did. All right, Gus Van Sant. It proved to me again, I already knew it, how daring this guy is as a filmmaker and how interesting his choices are. When I look back over his career, particularly leading up to this film, so when he'd become a success Good Will Hunting did that for him in 1997, and I reckon if you showed people lots of his other films, including this one, Jerry, in 2001, 2000 with Matt Damon. A couple of the films he made after this, even My Own Private Idaho in 91 with River Phoenix and Keanu Reeves. Those films are so idiosyncratic and non-Hollywood. And then in the mid-90s he makes To Die For with Nicole Kidman, again based on a true story. And then Good Will Hunting, which is a Damon Affleck project that he took over and helmed when it seemed like that film wasn't going to get made. And it's a conventional storytelling film, and it's brilliant. It's one of my favorite movies ever. But then you see Jerry, or you see this, or Private Idaho, and they're so different. It really should be different filmmakers. It's really interesting to me, and I like it. It's fearless, and shows me that he does what he wants to do. Maybe he made Good Will Hunting partly for commercial reasons to allow him then to go on and do what he wanted to do with those other projects, which is great. Everyone does that to an extent, I think. There's a common saying in Hollywood, one for them and one for me. Van Sant seems to be like one for me, a couple for them, 4 or 5 for me. Yeah, I just find him interesting. He is a bit of an outsider. His sexuality at the time made him different in a pretty macho society. And again, an example of being fearless and transparent and out there. No, he doesn't soften his subjects. And with this one, he doesn't attempt to turn it into a conventional thriller or a moral lesson. He just lays it out and lets us make a decision about it. I think a lot of filmmakers would have tried to structure this film or tried to organize some meaning into it, and he doesn't, which I like. And I touched on it before, but if you compare this to horror or action films like Halloween or Scream or Dawn of the Dead, there's an identifiable monster, and there's a structure, there's genre logic, and you get prepared for it and you look forward to it. This one's the opposite. I wasn't looking forward to the outcome that I knew was happening or around the corner, and I felt something for these guys that in this film that did the shooting, because they're just ordinary guys, and reminded me of people I've known without the shooting part. Far more disturbing thought. Could happen to anyone. Removes that psychological distance. So yeah, silly idea to watch it late at night. Honestly, I probably picked it for its running time. It's short. It's like 80 something minutes. And it slotted into that. And yeah, now I'm thinking about it still. And especially the ending. There's no relief valve, no decompression. You're left carrying it. And that's what's effective about it. And that's what I love about films that do this. Above all, I want to feel something from films, from music, from literature, whatever it is, from culture. That's what it's all about, right? Surely. I think it's just a waste of time sitting down and spending your time viewing something or absorbing something and then not feeling anything. What's the point? Anyway, another thing that hit me is the high school perspective, how the everyday becomes, well, the everyday in this film became the unthinkable, and I just kept on thinking how accurately it captured the normality of school life, the awkwardness, the boredom, the little things, the social tensions that you build up at that age, because it's such a difficult part of life, and it was for me. I wouldn't want to go through it again if you paid me, because you're trying to work out who you are, and everything seems so jarring and traumatic. There's highs and lows, tremendous highs, but tremendous lows, and it's not surprising to me that some of us don't make it through that time period. And when I watch this, or I watch Dead Poet Society, or even things like Carrie, they just remind me of how emotionally intense that period of life is. And I think I say this to a lot of people, is that whatever you're into at that age kind of stays with you in some form, whether it's the music you listen to. It's always special because you were so intensely wired to it. And I can remember feeling like everything at that age was speaking to me, and I could relate. It could relate to me, so I could grab onto it, especially music, but movies as well, and books. So connections, right? It's like I can connect to this. Someone understands me, because your parents don't, and even some of your friends don't, and you're trying to connect to someone. Pre-internet, especially, I think this was a much bigger. I assume it was a much harder thing to navigate. Pre-internet, because it was harder to find like-minded people to connect with. So I do want to comment on the way this is done, and it's really done extremely well when you consider that these people hadn't acted, and they're incredibly natural in front of the camera. I never felt like they were reading from a script or playing out something they'd rehearsed. I don't know how he did it. There's no little glances at the camera that you sometimes get, or awkwardness or woodenness. It was so real. And then on top of that, the way Van Sant does it with the long shots, like you'd just be watching something. No music. Again, so professional in that approach to just portray reality for us and leave it for us to pick apart. So yeah, it's so different what I took this time around in the rewatch. It's not about shock anymore. It's really just about observation and trying to show the environment around it without simplifying it. So unsettling. And I came away with this with so many more questions than answers. And I think that's what's meant to happen. So it's a film that doesn't care about giving you any relief. It's just showing you what happens and what can happen, and then it's over in 80-something minutes, and you're left to deal with it afterwards. And that's why it sticks, and I suspect I'll think about this film from time to time. And there's nothing wrong with that, I think. So yeah, if you're after something different and non-cinematic, from a great filmmaker who probably should get more recognition, check this one out. And I hope you enjoy is the wrong word. I hope you experience, you get a meaningful experience out of this one. Thanks again. Catch you next time.